Hello, and welcome to How AI is Reshaping Security Operations Centers. Today's webinar is sponsored by Radiant Security and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know there in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to a PDF of a Radiant Security Solution Brief, a link about empowering SOC productivity with Radiant, and a link to a guided product tour. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Okay, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's important presentation. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Orion Cassetto, who's Security Evangelist for Radiant Security. And we have Barry Steinman, who's CTO and co-founder of Radiant Security. So we've got an all-star panel here to present to you. So I'm going to turn things over to Orion to get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. So today's webinar is how AI is reshaping security operations, like Scott just said. So we'll dive right in. So first, a little bit deeper dive into our speakers. So with you today is Barry Steinman. Barry is CTO and co-founder of Radiant Security. He's a longtime security researcher, and he's been head of advanced security research at numerous companies, including Exabeam most recently. My name's Orion. I'm a security evangelist at Radiant Security. I've been in the industry about 15 years. Some of my past employers include also Exabeam and Imperva, but Cycode as well. So I've been tinkering for, again, better part of 2 decades. So today's agenda, first, we're going to start things at the highest possible level. We'll be talking about what is the state of security operations today. Then we'll talk about where SOCs are actually struggling, where they're feeling the pain, how it's manifesting itself. We'll look at what SOCs need in order to be successful. Then we'll kind of shift gears and talk directly about AI. What is AI? How's it been used in the past? How can it be used to solve some of our security operations problems? We'll look at some current offerings that are out in the market, and then we'll also talk about what we might want to see in order to improve the offerings in the market and do things in a newer way that can provide really more gains to our SOC teams. At the end, we'll do a live demo, and then we'll turn things back over to Scott for a Q&A. So I'm going to kick things off. First and foremost, I want to just throw it out there. I feel like cybersecurity in general has an effectiveness problem. Now, there's a bunch of ways you can come to this conclusion. The factoids that I'm using here, essentially the data is from the last 10 years of the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. And if you look at from 2012 to 2022, essentially what we saw is a rise in breaches that was fivefold, 509% during this time. And this is definitely through no lack of effort, capital, time, investment, technology. All of those things have been on the ups. But still, we're seeing this massive increase in breaches. So why? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons, but there are several that contribute to today's conversations. The first is this expanding attack surface. So if you look at the things that defenders have to protect against and to get security alerts from, essentially there are more than there have ever been. At the same time, the attacks themselves are increasingly complicated, and that's raising the skill bar for incoming talent and incoming security professionals. It's just more you have to wrap your arms around than you've ever had to do in the past. So that in and of itself is a challenge. And then lastly, we have this reliance on manual effort that is right in the middle of our security operations process. No matter how automated you are on detection or how automated you are on response, this middle area of figuring out what's happening and triaging alerts and doing investigations is slowing the whole thing down because it's reliant on human brains. Um, so essentially, this manual effort problem is a really big one because essentially we've been trying to hire more and better people along the way to solve this problem, but this is not a problem that we can hire our way out of. If you look at the stats from the most recent ISC squared workforce study, we are now at a spot where there are 3.4 million open cybersecurity roles. That's up 26% from last year. And the growth rates here are essentially the pace of demand for this talent is outpacing the supply by twofold. It's really a big problem. So much so that 70% of organizations at this point are saying that they don't have enough staff. So we can't look to hire more people to get out of this. We need to find other solutions. Now, when we look at this from specifically from the SOCs standpoint, this manifests itself in a couple of ways. So first and foremost, his work isn't getting done. The average SOC is looking at something like 10% of alerts. And why? They're doing this because they're trying to scope down the amount of work they have to match the capacity they have. And what that really means is that we're filtering out work, we're deprioritizing alerts in favor of just looking at the ones we think have the greatest probability of representing a true positive attack. We're trying to outsource to other organizations who are doing the same thing. And the net is that 90% of alerts just aren't getting looked at. Moreover, attacks are getting missed. They're getting missed because they exist in those blind spots, that 90% that no one's looking at. They're also getting missed because we don't have enough people to do in-depth investigations of every alert that comes our way and every incident that comes our way. And so parts of attacks are missed in their entirety, or they're partially missed because no one had the time or maybe even the skill to do an in-depth investigation to connect all the dots and figure out, actually this malware infected that machine. That infected machine stole a compromised a credential, and then it did this, that, and this. And if you can't connect all the dots and see the bigger picture, you miss things, and then you can't fix it. Which brings me to my last one, which is response is slow and incomplete. It's incomplete because you can't fix anything that you didn't find, and it's slow because it's sitting waiting for manual processes that do triage and investigation before we can even start the response. So no matter how automated you think your systems are, if you have a manual bottleneck upstream, your response times and remediation times are going to be measured in days or weeks instead of minutes, which is a really big problem. So, what does the SOC need to be successful? First and foremost, it needs unlimited capacity. Instead of trying to winnow down this proverbial haystack to find the needles, instead of trying to say, "Hey, we're going to try to figure out, and predict which alerts are the most impactful and look at those," you need to simply get rid of the haystack by looking at every single piece of hay. And in doing so, you are going to find the needles. So we need the capacity to triage, investigate, and respond to absolutely every alert. That's how we get the job done. Secondly, we need the ability to conduct in-depth investigation at scale. This is how we go from a world where we're solving problems at an atomic level, where we found one thing and we fix one thing, to we found an alert, we figured out everything related to that alert, and we fix all of it. And that's how we make sure that we're doing complete response. And then finally, we need intelligent and rapid response. It needs to be intelligent because it needs to be kind of fine-tailored, surgically customized to the problems that we found, and it needs to be automated. If we can automate triage and investigation, now automation can get us to a world where those response times come down from weeks to minutes. Okay, so we're going to shift our focus here because AI provides a way for us to accomplish a lot of the things on my last slide. But before we really get into a deep conversation about AI, I want to level the playing field and make sure that everybody understands what actually is AI. So AI is the ability for machines to perform tasks that are typically associated with human intelligence. That's stuff like learning and problem solving. And if if you're thinking to yourself, that's a really vague definition, it's true. AI includes a ton of things. It's been around for a while, not just in its current, generative AI form that everyone is thinking about these days. So let's take a look at that. It's been in cybersecurity since at least 1987. Um, Probably the first, mainstream or well-known examples are anomaly detection and intrusion detection systems that came out as part of a DARPA project in the late 80s. Um, in the 2000s, we essentially saw more and more applications of AI and generally in cybersecurity as well when big data came around. And now we have the ability to process way larger amounts of data and to find trends in those data and to implement more sophisticated types of AI. By the late 2000s, we had supervised learning algorithms that are helping us for threat detection and to implement better prevention techniques. As we move forward to the end of that decade and the beginning of the following one in the tens, we see unsupervised learning algorithms, which basically take that to the next level. Same with deep learning in this decade. So in the around like 2012 and beyond, we started to see the rise of behavioral modeling and behavioral analytics that made its way into entire categories, things like user and entity behavior analytics, network traffic analysis. And that started to spread into many different types of tools. Now, behavioral modeling and analytics are in EDRs, they're in CASBs, they're in all sorts of tools, NDRs. At the end of that decade, we saw increased use of NLP, natural language processing, and essentially that allowed us to take a better look at textual data and find more threats like business email compromise, social engineering attacks. Now, that brings us to the most recent times, the 2020s, and the hot thing on the street right now is large language models. So we're thinking about things like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google SecPalm, and Bard. And these are essentially, as we'll see in a couple of slides, ways for you to use natural language processing to essentially query large data sets and come to meaningful conclusions. Barry will talk more about that. In fact, this type of implementation of AI is super common right now. So if you just look at the run up to this year's RSA, so this is around the April-May timeframe of this year, what you essentially see is a ton of security companies who are releasing some form of AI helper that lets you use a ChatGPT or an OpenAI or a Google SecPalm to query large data sets more easily. And the theme here is help me to take my normal natural words and query big data sets to come to meaningful conclusions. All right, so let me show you what that actually looks like. We have a couple of examples. The first one is Splunk. So they have the Splunk AI assistant. For anyone who's been in cybersecurity for any length of time, you've probably touched or played with or used as part of your day-to-day Splunk. And we all know that Splunk is kind of a pain. You need to be able to figure out how to convert your thoughts into a query using their query language to retrieve the results you want. Essentially, that's what this AI agent does. So here they were looking for specific Windows security events, but essentially it made it really easy to create a query and to run that on their data set and get your results. And so that in and of itself is going to really boost the productivity of anyone who's using Splunk. Here's another one, basically the same thing, but for CrowdStrike. So here they ask the question, do we have vulnerabilities involving Microsoft Outlook? It's the same thing. Ask a question and then get in a very easy and natural way and get an answer across a large data set. One last one is Orca. Here, this is for their CNAP integrations built on top of OpenAI. Same general thing. The question being asked here is which virtual instances are stopped, and it converts that into a query that goes and gets the results. So the theme here is just make it much easier for me to get the answers to my questions. And AI is a really good kind of assistant or helper for that. So at this point, we're going to essentially shift gears, and Barry's going to tell us a little bit about other types of AI, other things that they can do, and other ways that they can be useful for security operations teams. So Barry, over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Orion. All right. So I'm going to share with you, my overview of what's going on, what the good, the bad, and mostly our direction of solving the security operations side of things, the approach we're taking, and our vision, and we'll end up in a demo of what we've built for those who are interested to see some follow up on how is this actually implemented. Piggybacking on what Orion just mentioned about all these technologies and evolution, he's right, and I've been blessed to be part of that evolution in the majority of my career. Recently, as Orion just mentioned, a few examples of really good products out there. There's a trend to take generative AI or natural language processing approach to simplify how users and experts that naturally use a certain aspect in technology can lower the bar or get their answers to their questions in a simpler way. And in security specifically, it's always about, instead of using a product that I am not an expert in, but I do know what I want to look for, using something that helps you get that answer in a simpler way is very, very helpful. Ryan, if you can move on. All right. So just going after the things that were mentioned before, how are most the security products that are now using some form of AI are working is by essentially taking like a senior analyst and make them very, very effective. And how does that work? If I can take, the crux of the kind of heavy lifting of the work, which is I need to get some queries from, we used Splunk as an example. I actually don't think it's a pain, by the way. I love using it still. It's probably old habits. But you need to, craft something in order to get there. And a lot of analysts that I talk to, often have like this notebook on the side of when I want this, I use that, and it's cumbersome, it's difficult, and it doesn't translate when you switch jobs or when a new person gets hired, etc. And it's really, really helpful for that. So these tools actually do is, if you take somebody that's been an analyst for the majority of their career and they know exactly what they're looking for, I need, when something happens, I want to go to this system and I'm going to pick up their AI and I'm going to ask a few questions that will get to data and will give me the answers I need, and it's really, really effective. I would claim that at least 2x on your time is returned when you use that versus having to craft things, etc. As long as you know exactly what you're looking for, systems like that should give you that answer. Orion, can you jump in? Next one. All right, so let's take the leap to where Radian believes the next step in evolution of AI for security operations should go. So far, we explained that all of the solutions really, really help somebody senior or seasoned, to say the least, to take what they know, not necessarily knowing the tool or not having to craft queries and assembling information and deducing, and get good answers. The problem is different though, in our opinion. So what we came up with, we said to ourselves, look, like, I know the answers, and I spent hours and thousands of hours of my career just knowing all of these answers, but the knowledge that I acquired is not about what answer looks like. It's about what questions to ask and when. When I see something, what should I be thinking about? Take the doctor case. When somebody comes to the doctor's office and says, "Hey, I have a fever and there's a little itch here." Do they know what to ask to glue the things, or do they have to go to books or to other experts, and do they need to bring somebody in from another room? That's where the knowledge comes in. And if you kind of separate the analyst to its seasonality, or not seasonality, the experience, an analyst on their first day is not as good as an analyst on their fifth year, both because of what they know about the security knowledge they have, what they've seen before, what they know to ask when they see a certain thing, and they also know the environment a little bit. So we believe that instead of answering your questions, we should actually tell you what questions you need to ask. And by that, we apply knowledge that you may have, but you may not have if you're, on the more junior side, or it's like an area that you're not an expert in just yet. So kind of under the hood, if we look at what makes an analyst really, really good, what do they need to have in order to do their job correctly? So the first thing is signals. An analyst, in order to understand that they need to, jump and kind of shut down the fire, is they need an alert, something that tells them something is happening here, and we don't know if it's a real alert or the common case of it's a false positive 99% of the time. Making that decision uh, starts with getting the alert from whatever security tool you purchased, regardless to the space and the use case. Then you need to have some outputs, some historical outputs, etc. So what happened before? Did we have another alert like this before? Are there other systems that are affected? Is this certain thing contained an IOC that we should look at? And all of these things you achieve by either tools you purchase, websites, your own knowledge, etc., etc., etc. Next, you need environmental knowledge. So, and this is where kind of Orion mentioned earlier, like technologies like UBA in the past that are kind of aging out as we speak, which are technologies that help here's everything that happened, what was anomalous, what was not, what was okay. Is it okay that Orion went into our parking lot at 2 a.m. on a Sunday? Maybe it is, but if he was there and it wasn't supposed to be, maybe that's a signal I should take into my investigation. And it's going to be really, really hard for a human to explore, but that signal is very viable. And finally, best practices. So um, in order to get from security posture to a risk and compliance posture, oftentimes you want to map the activities that you do and the process that you do to something known, such as we use here MITRE ATT&CK or CIS and other frameworks that essentially help you A, navigate through what you need to do, and B, kind of help two people interact. I always call MITRE ATT&CK as the Diffie-Hellman of security. Let two people that don't know each other and don't know what they're talking about reach to similar conclusions by having a common language. So that really, really helps connect between the teams. All right. So, as I said before, we're taking a very, very different approach on top of everything that was already seen. Our logic is we do not intend to just answer your questions because, as important as that is, there's already really good tools for that, and Orion mentioned some of them. But the challenge is when you're not a senior or when you see something that you've not seen before, how do you know what to ask next? If I see a file, like, should I look at the process that owns all of the credentials to see if it's related or not? How do I know that that thing even exists? So the technology itself, what it should be doing is check for all of the information about the security alerts that exist, and know based on telemetry and other signals what will be the right thing to ask next in order to uncover the problem. Think about it as I see something, I have a thesis, this might be this, and I need to now prove or disprove that thesis. But coming up with the thesis is the hard part, right? That's what PhDs do. And when you do when you're able to do that and then attach it to response plans, etc., and actually interpret all of your findings, uh, you're able to achieve a solution that allows you to contain and get back to good. In our case, that means that if we do all of these things, eventually that enables AI to automate it end to end, all the way from seeing the first signal, collecting everything, interpreting it, coming up with all of the thesis of this might be this or that, and maybe if I found this, maybe it also means that. And eventually, because we've done all of that, what should I do or what should I propose to the SOC in order to get back to good? Isolate a host, block a machine, send somebody an angry email, whatever it might be. All right. So, in order to eventually the meeting point is between, and this is the hard part in adoption. The meeting point is taking the human, helping that human by being, instead of like being an assistant that you just tell them go get me this paper, go, like actually helping you as a peer that sits next to you and take some of the load away from you. And that's really, really key. But in order to have that connection, you need to have a way to interpret it as a human at the end. So part of what we're doing is we're making sure that when something happened, it's not just a score. It's not like a risk score. Hey, it's above a certain number, therefore this should be the rest of your day. No, it needs to be what happened here. Why is it important? Why did it impact? Who else touched whatever asset it is? Is it still active, etc.? And what was the root cause? If I see malware, did it come from a download, a USB? Did anybody else plug that USB, etc., etc., etc.? And because you've done all of this and you've seen all of these points, also propose a response plan. What should I do now in order to get back to good? And again, even then, and we'll show it later in a demo, it can be as autonomous or as manual as you want. You want a GPS or a map to drive your car? Great. You want the Tesla experience? No problem. We'll do it for you. And of course, just like the Tesla experience, if there's a doubt, here you go. It's yours. At the end, the goal here is to improve, I guess, two main things. One, your efficiency as a team, because there's always going to be a new member of the team that needs to learn more about the environment and even learn more about security because they come at a certain level. And the second one is you want to free up time of experts that will be escalation or even tier one to actually deal with things that are, let's call it, less common. You know, as weird as that, as my next comment is going to sound like, malware is a commodity. If you're a security analyst, it's one of the things you deal with day in, day out. Ransomware is a flavor of it, something that you train on, you know what to do with it day in, day out, and you've probably done it a lot of time. Phishing, all of those things that, take a lot of your time. If we can take all of those things that a machine can solve and leave you just with the things that are very, very unique to your company, like, when HR asks you to investigate a certain behavior of someone, when there's a DLP thing, or where maybe there was a system down or a system that's not monitored and you don't have signals for it and somebody needs to look at it, or in the worst case, something did happen, triage did complete, you need to sue someone, now you need to collect some high-end evidence, you need to bring in your mandiants of the world in, and that and the goal is, if I can free all of that time to you, you get to be better, you get to have all of that critical time, and as a result of it, we've helped you in both facets, right? Getting better. I'm kind of repeating myself. Getting better on your efficiencies, and also helping the team improve and improve. So, just to wrap it up, that's what we've built. I'm very proud of it. It's been a labor of love by a very talented team so far to have built kind of the next gen, not to abuse that term, of tools, a tool that can be the center of all of the different signals and security tasks that the SOC has when it comes to incident response, and with technology help them become better. Just as an example, today at the time that we're kind of talking to you guys, our system monitors around 300,000 users. We don't have a single analyst in a SOC to do that, because everything is handled by our software. Our customers then add their own resource to, fill in the gap where the specific things to them. But with that, the SOC Copilot thing is a very interesting evolution, and I'm very proud to let you guys have a taste. Right. So, as we said before, we talked about what we do, and we gave some examples of why it's important, etc., and how is it different. And I kind of want to walk you through kind of our product, our approach, and maybe using like a fairly simple incident to kind of show you the end to end of it. So when you walk into Radiant, our approach is show you the things that are actionable and where they are in their incident lifecycle. Bear in mind, this is my test and lab environment, so the numbers here are very skewed. But in most environments, you have hundreds of thousands of security alerts and very few incidents. And so in here, we bombard it all the time, so it looks like it looks. But what happens is you see everything in the pipeline of the alerts that come in. Then we break it down into the actual incidents in the environment. And they do get a flag of live if it has not been contained yet. So, because there is a difference if an alert is being dealt with and some measures have been taken, versus no, it's live, it's affecting you. If it's malware right now, or there's a phishing email in the CEO's mailbox that he hasn't deleted, all of those things can still have impact. And then we specifically mark them as live to make you pay attention. The way we show it in a high level is, AI will generate the phrase that will explain at a high level what is this incident. We'll show you exactly where we are at the stage of going all the way from triaging it to getting back to good, end of remediation, as well as a measurement of blast radius, meaning what was actually the impact of said incident on your environment. Because in most solutions, what you'll see is, severity. And why is that? To make sure that your human looks at the right thing. If they have a limited amount of resource, maybe they should only do critical or high. You have a bigger team, maybe they should also do medium. But we're software. We don't care. We'll run on everything, informational all the way to whatever you have there. Because of that, the way to measure importance is actually by impact. Which identities were involved, which devices were involved, or how many applications were involved, and data objects. It can be, Salesforce object, it can be files, it can be what have you, database instances, or what have you. So that's at a glance the entry point. Then, if we drill down into what is an incident, it's my first opportunity to show you what did the system produce for you when it received an alert and decided, you know what, this is bad. And, imagine your analyst decided this thing is bad. Now I need to report what happened here and I need to get back to good. In this case, I'm using something that, because I don't know the audience and where you are in your progression. So we'll use phishing because it's fairly low-hanging fruit to discuss. So in this case, somebody sent a phishing email, might have had a file or a link in it that, leads to like a page that captures credentials and what have you. And Radiant caught it, decided it's bad, and then summarized it. I'll start with the summary, and then I'll tell you how we got there. So first thing, as you can see, there's this nice visual here that kind of gives you, at a glance, here's the impact. If you're the manager, you might only be interested in that because that will be the thing that matters to you the most. We had an incident, and it affected one user and one application. If you want to see the details, and we made sure that the generative part also kind of gives you the summary in a very simple and concise way, so you understand exactly what happened at the top level. Example: this user reported us an email. They thought it's phishing. We actually found that 2 users got it, and it was involved in a phishing campaign. And then we actually saw that one of the users clicked on that link and posted their credentials into the system, and because of that, we've seen credentials later on, or we looked for credentials later on used somewhere else by one of our applications, which means that application is potentially compromised as well. And the root cause, again, an email, it's pretty simple. It's just, you received it through an email from this sender, etc. The way that the information manifests is with simple to answer questions that if I was the SOC manager and I come to an analyst and I want to know what's going on, here's the questions that I'm going to ask. And they're all about how does this impact my company versus what hash is this? So in a phishing case, the system will reduce and say, all right, here's the things I need to ask to answer to the human at the end for explainability. Who sent the malicious phishing email? What was their sender in this case? What was the URL that deemed this is the one that when users click on it is the URL that leads to that malicious site? Who reported it to us? Who was that good user that decided, hey, please tell me if this is phishing or not? And then who's everybody else that received this email? If it was a phishing campaign, it might have landed on hundreds of mailboxes. Finally, for those who did actually click on that URL, did they act? Who clicked on it, and which applications did they then access post doing that? So you can go and check. Maybe this has been compromised as well. Now, while this is the complete investigation of what happened, that's not where it stops. Normally, what teams are doing, depending on their maturity, they will have a response plan. To first they need to communicate with the user. They need to maybe block an email if they have the URL, maybe add it to like some sort of a denial list of some sort. And there's a lot of tasks to do. And oftentimes, what happens is that companies are buying products like SOAR in order to build like playbooks around that. But SOAR and other things like that require two things, right? They require a lot of knowledge. And in that case, they also require maintenance, and they require, ProServe in some cases, and back and forth. And that's an art in itself, just like managing and running a SIM on the data front is. In our case, because we've done the investigation, we know exactly what happened, we can tailor a response plan that is proactive, immediate, like exactly to what happened here. So there's no playbooks that you might need in let's call it the old day. In this case, I'll give you some examples. I'll show you one or two. So, this is the person who reported the email to me. Maybe I want to notify them. In this case, it's a system that we play with a lot. We already notify them. And maybe I want to notify everybody that got involved. Hey, Mr. Person, that email that you received is actually phishing. So, and you can, we'll let you edit the templates and manifest it whatever you like. But we can, send you a message that says, hey, you actually had a phishing email in your mailbox. Please be careful, whatever. Thank you to security team. And you can edit that as much as you want and add your logo, all of that stuff. But the idea is to take away that part that is communication back and forth with the user. And this, of course, can be on Teams, Slack, email, text, whatever you want. The system will support. In this case, it's configured to do email. Then there's the more sophisticated stuff. So you might want to delete the emails from that user's mailboxes because you don't want, essentially, you want to contain that surface from getting other users involved or letting them have the chance of accidentally clicking on that. So the way we approach it is actually we wanted to be a bit more educational versus just run a playbook. Instead, we said, here's the task that you need to do to accomplish this goal. Here's what we decided you need to do. What it means. Now, of course, you can either click execute and we'll do it for you, integrate it into your system. You can mark it as complete if you've done it on your own, and you can ignore it if you don't ignore it. With that, there are workflows that can automate this. So as I said earlier, these things should be as autonomous as you want. You want to review everything? Great. You need approval because one of the recipients is the CEO and you want to make sure that somebody looks at it before they go and delete something? Great. You want everything manually reviewed? Also great. It's your levers and your workflows that you attach on top of it to decide how much level of remediation response automation would you like us to apply. Now, when I look at what needs to happen, we took two approaches. The first one, because we know all of these products that we connect to get the telemetry and do the triage with their data, we'll provide you guidance. Maybe you've never done this before. Maybe you don't know how to do this. Maybe, sometimes some of our users, not even the security team. Sometimes it's an intern that needs to deal with things for a little while to help the SOC on capacity. So here's how you would do this. You'll connect to this and that, do this and that. And it's, of course, populated. It was generated and populated by the system with all of the parameters that are required to do this correctly. However, maybe you want to do it programmatically in some cases. If it's an API or it's in this case, it's a Microsoft, so maybe there's a PowerShell interface that you can do it. Well, our secret sauce in how the system operates and makes decisions, not in how to perform a task. So we want, as part of it, to be open to you and also, gain your trust with we're actually doing the right things and maybe help you learn something if you don't know it yet. Here's the script. The system generated a script that will achieve exactly that with everything populated in it. Here you go. If you run this, it does it. Allows you the opportunity to audit it, to make to sometimes you want to just copy this and paste it into your console. Great. That's the approach to response, and it's for everything that we do, and that's very, very important. Now, how did we decide that this is actually? One time before that, oftentimes when you have a phishing email of some sort, you're now going to have to go into the user's mailbox, ask them to maybe forward it. You need to see it. We need to see meta information. And for any type of alert that we'll get, it may be email for email, it may be on endpoint with the process tree and other things that might matter. We'll make sure that A, everything that we need is extracted, and B, here's the email. So you don't have to leave the system in order to complete your job, which is, again, time going back to you. So everything is in one place. Now, one of the key points is how did we decide that this email is actually malicious? Because 99% of it is not. And that's true to any alert. So here's our triage engine. And the way it will render is by showing you, the incident that we eventually escalated to, and then what was it's kind of it builds up. And the last one is, here's when we decided this is bad. Now, the system shows for ease of use, the thing in a kind of a build-up, but imagine that it's a kind of a machine that pivots right and left. I see this, therefore I should do that. I see this, maybe I should try this. Oh, I proved that it's right, let's do that. Not going to go into the math behind it, but that's roughly how it works. And it does things that we train it. So, for example, maybe this was a phishing simulation campaign. If it was, maybe I wanted to go to the user. Maybe I want to. By the way, if they clicked on the URL in a phishing simulation, maybe I want to actually sign them to a training session, which we can do later on, or back where we were in like the response. I can extract things like all of the URLs that happen in the email. If so, imagine instead of just looking at the URL and maybe it's like a Bitly. No, let's take it, render the URL, render the website. What happens in there? What kind of logic is there? JavaScript and Flash or whatever. I said Flash. I apologize. That's dead. But other technologies that help you render a malicious site. It might look like your corporate login page, etc. And again, attackers are sophisticated. So in file cases that get attacked, there might be a password, so we'll crack that. It might be behind various proxies or redirection services. In this case, it actually had a CAPTCHA that held like the final page and said, hey, just before you go to this, click here and go in. So that will already prevent most systems from getting in. And we solved the CAPTCHA and move on, no problem. I'll move on a little bit and like find something interesting. All right, so identify login form. As I said earlier, a thesis. We believe, or the system, we trained it to believe that if a site might be phishing, then it will likely try to capture your credentials in some form or way. So, is there a page that we understand with a computer vision that it looks like a login page? If it is, let's now decide if it's good or bad. In this case, eventually we found that this specific page actually relates to a different incident on another user, and it's already been convicted in another place. Therefore, we can stop here because we've already convicted this page and escalate the incident. But there are other things like putting computer vision to see if the brand that the site represents is actually the brand that's owned by the domain, and if it's your site and your logos, is it sitting on your assets or not? Are these something your company name .salesforce.com might be common for you to access, but it's not any third intelligence, etc. So it's going to be hard for any system to look at unless there's machine learning that says no, this company.salesforce.com is actually very common. We all use it. This is okay. Go in. This is not an incident. Thank you, sir. And that's roughly it. So again, we took it end to end, all the way from triage through showing you the summary of the investigation to how to get back to good. One thing that I want to touch up at the end is one of the things that we decided to do is we keep every investigation and triage forever. We will never delete a triage or an investigation from our system, unless you ask us to, of course. And the reason is because sometimes something happened a month ago, and maybe you want to go back and understand why something was not a true positive. A lot of security practice is not, to guarantee that you're never getting hacked, etc. It's the mandate to say, I do the best I can every time in a repeatable way to ensure that when something happens, I will use my best efforts to do the best work. And that's why we decide to keep, everything that's bad that might have happened, and I'm sure there's going to be something here. Of course, the majority is actually good, so it's cleaned. But if something was deemed, this is okay, this is not an incident, and somebody questions it, you can always go back to that evidence. That's it. That's the demo. Hopefully, I was able to explain things fairly well. Would love to talk to anybody that wants to either geek out about the technology or want to try this. Love to have anybody join our wonderful customer list and be part of the journey with us. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Scott, if you want to go into Q&A, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, super. We do have a few questions coming in here. One of them, they're asking, how is this different than a SOAR?
I'll take it. So just like we showed in the demo, SOAR is great, and I actually think that in certain utilities, it's very, very effective. For example, in IT ops, where you need to build a gold build every time, or for some cases where you just every time something happens, you want to get a lot of information, or exactly what's going on and what are the steps to take to close it. In security, however, it's challenging. Because developers and security teams are not necessarily the same ones. And that requires lots of maintenance. A SOAR can solve what it's seen before, and you were able to figure out and build a playbook and integrate with everything and figure out all of the customizations to your organization. If you are able to do that, great. You can actually get that value from it. However, because security is ever changing and every threat looks a little bit different, and every incident looks a little bit different, it's hard to magic wand one solution for everything in a certain area. Like, not everything phishing should be solved one way. Not everything malware should be solved another way. Not everything that is, I don't know, stolen credentials from an identity system should be looked at the same way. So the one of the differences is, first of all, it's not a parallel, right? Because you use SOAR to respond, where here you use it to actually understand what happened, if it's good or bad, etc. But second, as I've shown in the demo, our approach is not to let you run a playbook at the end, although you can. You can connect your SOAR to an API if you use it. Enjoy. I think there are cases that's valuable, but in most cases, what you want is a tailored response to what just happened, and that's what we do. Instead of having a prescribed workload that you've made in order to solve a problem, we generate it as we go in order to make sure that it's tailored to that one case, and therefore you never have to tune it, you never have to do anything on your own other than, here's what I need to do, let me do it for you, or take the wheel and do it however you want.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo that. I mean, just in terms of the setup and implementation efforts, there's no, premeditated playbooks to build and maintain. It's up and running out of the box. You don't have to. Essentially, it does this without the maintenance and setup layer, because it's all dynamically done by the engine instead of premeditatively done by a human.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Next one here, they're wondering, does this replace SOC analysts?
Can you repeat that?
Does this replace SOC analysts?
It does not. So I believe that every company always needs to have, first of all, uh, people that can help them translate outcomes to management, to other teams. They need to collaborate with them outside of the SOC area, because a security expert is a security expert, and the findings and the things that they need to do to communicate with others, at least as of today, humans do it better. The interaction is better. Second, even for a system, depending on your risk appetite, you might want to have people to audit the findings and execute them in some cases, and those should be done by analysts. And the last one is, I mentioned this before, there are things that are very unique to your company that somebody needs to come and learn. Who do I interact with? What is the risk here? What's the workflow? When a certain application gets breached, who's the business owner? How do I communicate with them? What kind of evidence I need to give them? When HR calls me, it might be something that they want to know, some evidence about a user, lock their laptop, what have you. So there's a lot of workload that is very, very unique to every company, and that should be done by humans. Our role, the way we see it, is helping them expand and helping them kind of take the common stuff away, or the trivial stuff away, and therefore multiplying their capacity versus replacing. I don't think there's room to replace human judgment at this day and age yet.
Yeah, and I just want to tack onto that. We're in a world where we don't have enough people to do the jobs, and a lot of the jobs aren't getting done. And so it's not about like removing the human, it's about making it so those humans can get the job done.
Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
better way to say it, for sure.
There's another one here. They're wondering, what if an attack changes types or data sources? Providing some context too. It's great that you can triage an alert, but what if the alert kicks off other different types of attacks, like phishing that infects the host with malware or it steals credentials?
Sure. Sounds trivial in my head, so apologies, but the system finds that. So there is cross-pollination between all signals. The way that the system operates is it brings in everything from the sensors that you have. You have CrowdStrike or SentinelOne, whatever. You have your Microsoft security tools. You have your UBA. You have your antivirus. Whatever you have, Cloud Guard Duty in AWS. all of those things are signals and their data. And when the system looks at an alert, it actually looks at all data and all pivots. If somebody accessed this and they connected to the cloud, and from the cloud they planted something, it spawned a process, then connected back to something else, and all of that stuff, the system is able to trace throughout the plethora of information that it gathers. So to summarize it, if an alert jumps from one vector to the other, the system will find it. It's designed to do it. It's designed exactly to not get into that. Often in a SOC, somebody's an expert on one thing, and if they don't know everything, or they think something happened, they move it to another team, and then there's context switches or losses of information. Well, because the system touches all points, it actually does all of that jumping right and left, and is able to solve it end to end and find the jumps, and all of the lateral movement and all of that stuff.
Also, by looking at all alerts, you get a chance to look at it through the lens of email, you get a chance to look at it through the lens of identity, you get a chance to find it through, network security logs or network security alerts. And so you get multiple opportunities to find the same chain of attacks in addition to what Barry just said. So
Okay. All right. Excellent. Another question here: what data sources do you support?
Um, I'll tell you this from vision standpoint. If it's a security telemetry, we'll either support it or we'll support it, because that's the vision, that's where we're going, regardless to the space and the use case. Today, as of right now, it's everything on identity. So either it's your AD, IAM, Azure AD, or if you have alternatives, it's everything in the Microsoft ecosystem, actually, including security tools. It's everything on endpoint, so your EDRs, etc. On network, so your firewalls, IPSs, everything that can VPN services, everything that can produce a network signal. In email, it will bring message traces, and will be able to connect to your mail system and your smart links, and or if not just in the mail system, also if you have a security solution like Abnormal or Proofpoint or whatever you use in your company, we can connect to that too, to see their alerts, to see their data, to use it, maybe use them as a way to conduct actions to return back to good. And then there's also things like in your platform, so AWS, GCP, stuff that has telemetry about things that you're running on as infrastructure. And the list just grows and grows and grows every time there's an entire data research engineering team that works on always adding more signals, turns straight into the research team. They see the problems, they train AI then can solve new things. It's an ever-growing thing, but that's where it starts. So to summarize everything I just said, to categories that everybody will understand. So everything identity and everything identity and everything email, everything endpoint, everything network, most of things that are cloud. I don't know if I missed anything. I think that's it.
Sure.
Oh, of course, cloud authentication providers as well. The Oktas, the pings, because that provides another way to authenticate and get to your org, and that creates like the cloud attack surface that is very important. So those as well.
Okay. There's also a question here about your licensing. They're wondering, how are you licensed? Is it by data volume?
All right.
Sure. Hey, I get one. No, it's not by data volume. So essentially, what we do is we are looking at the number of users at an organization and slash or the number of devices or endpoints at an organization. And essentially, how we license it is we sell it by use case. A use case to us is like kind of a data type. So the ones that Barry just said: email, identity, endpoint, network, etc. And the idea there being that you can essentially pick a specific problem that you want to solve. Like, we never want our SOC to ever have to deal with phishing ever again. You can buy that problem to get solved. And then, after a while, you're like, you know what, we're done with endpoint 2. We never want to look at another endpoint. And so you can essentially take buy a chunk of your SOC time or SOC work that will take off your team's plate. And then over time, you can buy additional ones, or you can buy them all. But the two vectors are essentially data type and either number of users or number of devices, whichever is applicable to that specific type of data.
Okay. All right. And we're coming up on time here, but we probably have time for one more, and I'll keep this one with you, Orion. If somebody wants to get started with Radiant Security, what do you recommend? What resources should they check out?
Absolutely. So, first step is, I would say, go to our website. There's a bunch of different of assets for them. We have a live product demo on our website, so they can poke around. You can talk to sales there. There's several videos that'll show you, kind of what the product does, and a bit of kind of a canned demo like Barry did. And then there's a lot of educational resources and of course, ways to find us.
All right. Super. Well, Barry, Orion, thank you so much for coming on, for the really informative presentation, just for bringing us up to speed on Radiant Security, what you guys are up to. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time, Scott.
Thanks.
Okay, and before we wrap up, we have one more piece of business. It is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of this $250 Amazon gift card is Jonathan Bircher from South Carolina. So congratulations to Jonathan Bircher. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Radiant Security for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for all of your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.